Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a early Clio talk. We are going to talk about optimism.
Yeah, this is a discourse episode.
Yes. If you follow anything with Urbanist Twitter or Urbanist Blue Sky, this is weird if you aren't into that kind of stuff and you just kind of listen for us talking about sports, but
Consider this your primer, basically.
yeah, we are going to basically talk about Twitter and Blue Sky beef against a famous YouTuber, and not just bikes, who had a today is 7/31 of 2023, and he had a absolute brain dead tweet or Blue Sky post. What is it called on Blue Sky?
I don't know, Skeet.
Yeah.
I think broadly, we're not just going to have this be like entirely Twitter discourse, because I think I've got some things I kind of want to talk about, but we are going to give you context for why we're making this episode specifically today and why we're releasing it early.
Also, the context of the conversation we've been having the past few days, because I personally have been going down the main topic for everything, which is doomerism, for a little bit now, and I've been telling RC about it for a few days, and I think he's just fed up with that, and the final straw has hit RC's.
Yeah, it's broadly just a trend I've been seeing, and this is kind of the last straw that is like, okay, this is now a podcast worthy episode. I now have things to talk about, because it's just a general trend of people being kind of, doomer, if you don't know, if you're not into the internet lingo, is basically just like doom and gloom, right? I'm just like, your mindset is like, wow, nothing ever gets better, nothing can improve.
A negative outlook on life in which nothing can improve.
Yeah, it's just generally bleak. But okay, so Not Just Bikes, in response, they released a video. Basically, they're a video YouTuber. They make some decent content. They make videos about like urbanism, transit improvements, whatever.
And if you want to look at a major part of his Schroeds episode does consist of the Kansas City area, whether it is the suburb of Kansas City called Overland Park, as well as Grand Boulevard and the Crossroads. Kansas City is a focus on that, and as a Kansas City-centric podcast, we're trying to improve upon the built environment we have in Kansas City.
Yeah.
We're featured there. I mean, we'll admit that we're wrong and that our city has some issues. And he released a video today entitled Designing Urban Places That Don't Suck.
Because generally, Not Just Bikes' whole focus is kind of highlighting places that are designed poorly in, like, usually the United States, because I believe that's where they're originally from.
They are from Canada, actually.
They're from Canada?
They're from outside Toronto.
Oh. And then contrasting it with a place in usually the Netherlands, where things are designed better, because they moved to the Netherlands because they believe that it basically embodies all the values they want to live in, and they were tired of living in the U.S. and Canada, North America in general, so they just were like, they're a big advocate for the Netherlands, basically, because the Netherlands is famously like bike-centric and kind of very walkable terrain design.
And for context, the Netherlands were able to do that because in the 1970s, the Dutch people were having a mini revolt against the car-centric design of their cities and basically advocated for creating a better public infrastructure and a city built for the human environment, and were able to eventually achieve that earlier than the rest of the world because they stopped their massive highway expansion while the United States continued to do it constantly up until basically today.
More context, which will be relevant later. The Netherlands is roughly the same size as New Jersey.
It's also getting consumed by the sea.
Yes, so it is not a particularly large country. So in the context of highway expansion, it is as if New Jersey stopped. Basically, the Federal Highway Infrastructure Act is a lot larger than the Netherlands' infrastructure. Any infrastructure that
also the United States is the third most populous country in the world.
Yes,
and the Netherlands have. I don't exactly know their population. I'm going to send...
It's 16 million.
16 million.
Yes. I may have been looking this up earlier.
All right, so...
The population of New Jersey is 10 million, so they're comparable size. New Jersey does have a higher population density than the Netherlands at 1,200 per square mile versus the Netherlands is 1,100 per square mile. So despite having a smaller population, it is a higher density and about the same size. So if you want to talk about, Housing density, New Jersey actually has the Netherlands beat, and I would argue New Jersey probably has a better public transit, infrastructure than the Netherlands.
Path superiority.
Yeah, and New Jersey Transit, and they have better access to larger cities because the city of New York has more population than the Netherlands.
And they also have Philadelphia, which
Yes.
basically New Jersey is a half suburb state of half New York suburbs, half Philadelphia suburbs, and the Jersey Shore.
Yes.
Shout out to the hit MTV TV show.
Okay, but getting back on topic, basically they just, a person tweeted basically just kind of pushing back on
Blue skied. They blue skied.
Yeah, blue sky. They skeeted back on basically not just Spikes was talking about how they were, wanting to go on a rant, but they kind of dialed it back. But this person was like, well, it's important to consider that a lot of this is deliberate decision and doesn't undermine advocacy efforts in changing the status quo. Our cities are the bare bones of human-scaled walkable communities. I see a lot of people giving up on North America when that's a doomer mindset. To which not just Spikes replied, people should give up on North America, though. You should not have to spend your life groveling for basic things like safe streets. Your advocacy and energy would go much further in a better city, too. That's not doomerism. That's just reality. And they go on to say other things in which they also point out that their channel has never been about trying to fix the US and you should just move to other cities that do things better, to which I would say a lot of their videos, having watched a couple of them, do seem like they're focused on trying to fix the U.S. I don't think that's ever been
pointing
the
out
case.
mainly American examples of things that have been done wrong,
and contrasting with examples of how to do it properly. And I don't think I've ever gotten the gist that their channel's focus is moving. But that's broadly.
If you were not going to focus on North America, why would you ever talk about North America and just not talk about the Netherlands constantly? Even though you kind of do, but you always use it in the context of a North American mindset.
Yeah, that's broadly though. I think. Neither here nor there, because I think we're trying to rail this into not just being entirely blue score Twitter discourse.
Oh, but also, are we all supposed to? Are 300 million Americans supposed to move to Amsterdam?
I think yes. That is the answer. Also, and the other problem I have with this is just the whole fact that not everyone can move across the ocean. Not everyone wants to learn a brand new language. A lot of people in general like the place they grew up. They're familiar with it. They, that's their hometown. They know a lot of people there. Their family lives there. They don't want to have to move to the fucking Netherlands to live. And that's where
I'd like to be able to think about riding my bike to work and having a discussion that we had a few episodes back, I think a couple months ago at this point, about e-bikes.
Yes.
And in reality, an e-bike investment would get me killed where I currently live, trying to commute every single day with it. That's bad. That's dangerous. I don't want that to happen, and I wish I could, but that's a fixable issue.
Yes. I think that it's basically the take is just that it's unfixable, or at least it takes too long, so just do what I did and move to a place where it's already fixed. But that is also disregarding the advocacy and work that people in the Netherlands had to do to change it as well. And I don't see why it's possible for them to do it there and for you to hold them up as not you, but strong, not just Bikes, to hold them up as an example, while then saying literally anywhere else it's impossible, right?
Also,
it's not possible for anybody else to do what this example I use of people doing it did.
Also, the Netherlands is a 50-year head start.
Mm-hmm.
It does take incremental change. Looks like it took incremental change to do it in the Netherlands.
Yes, but now moving off of the doomer outlook onto the positive outlook, it's not productive to be this doomer, nothing gets better or whatever. It's just, it doesn't help, right? Because not just Bikes doesn't live here, right? Their example is mostly just looking at Google Maps of cities and stuff. But it's things do get better all the time. And when your entire channel is just you highlighting the worst possible examples of society, of transit infrastructure, of housing infrastructure, it makes a lot of sense why their outlook would have soured over the years into just being a nothing ever gets better, nothing improves. Because I'm not sure how often, I don't watch them that often, how often they actually highlight good examples. Which, I mean, our podcast is based out of Kansas City. 10 years ago, there was no streetcar. There was, we're a car-centric city. We're perhaps one of the car-centric cities in the United States, some of the highest highway miles per population. But now we have a streetcar.
Nashville has taken over that title, but we did have
Nashville.
that. But and that points out to the tweet or Blue Sky Skeet that's on the screen right now, where Not Just Bikes is pointing out that America Today is dead in the Netherlands in the 1970s. It's nowhere close. That was fixable within a generation. The U.S. isn't. I can remember the opening of the streetcar because that wasn't very long ago. Actually, the streetcar opened after, correct me if I'm wrong, after the Royals won the World Series.
Yes, 2016.
It opened in 2016. I have been a legal adult. I mean, you can use that to calculate how old I am.
Yeah.
The entire time the streetcar has existed, the streetcar didn't exist for my entire childhood from 0 to 17 years old. So it's like, it is fixable within a generation because now, before I turn 30, I am going to see a system that spans miles in Kansas City that is rail-based, that goes between some of the largest attractions in the Kansas City area, and a push for a more expansion of that. Yes, it is possible, I believe, to do within a generation. It will require way more advocacy and way more push to stop doing it piecemeal, one at a time, and actually build an entire system right off the bat. Yeah, but as people who, because RC has probably talked to us before, looking into it, we have looked at these plans that have been released for the Kansas City area that have been going on for longer than we've been alive. And none of them has actually come to fruition. None of them have actually existed because there hasn't been a push to actually do it. I'm not sure it's because I live in a bubble or whatever, or what goes on, but every conversation I have with a person around my age, within our generation, it's a generational understanding, at least from people I talk to, that there is an interest in cycling. There's an interest in e-bikes. There's an interest in transit, and there's an interest in living in a city. And that is a generational change that I feel like the generation that we are a part of, and I think most of our listeners are as well, because we do have access to the demographics of this podcast. Yeah, we know who you are. That was creepy. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah. If you apologize, it makes it worse.
It does make it worse.
You just got to blow past it.
The understanding seems to be that a mistake has been made by previous generations, and I feel like it's doable because, once again, the streetcar has existed only for my adult life, and I never thought that I would see an expansion of it, let alone that this thing would even happen in Kansas City. Because growing up in Kansas City, when my family did come to Kansas City, we aren't like entirely Kansas City natives, but the conversations about what it was in like the late 90s, where Union Station was basically a ruin. Kansas City was basically at the end of its like death cycle, where it was almost completely abandoned. And it is a stark turnaround from what we've accomplished today, because they're driving down to Kansas City, driving around Kansas City, which I wish I didn't have to drive, but you will not go a day without seeing a crane now. That is developmental progress, along with the streetcar route, and the Union Station's been completely repaired, and that was done through a bi-state tax that both Kansas and Missouri, which historically have never gotten along, were able to agree upon and provide a massive restoration project to bring Union Station back to life. That was in 2004. Yes. 2004.
And it's like new projects getting approved every single day. Even so, the Uptown Theater, we were just over there the other day. That entire block, I was there for a concert a couple years ago, and I didn't even realize the area I was in until I saw the theater in Kansas City. And it's now the parking garage across the street that used to just be a strip mall and a parking garage is now apartments and stores, like, mixed use zoning almost. it's like that happened in 2 years. That's densification.
I'm not sure if we were recording or this was after the recording of our previous episode. Go back and listen to it. It is a episode about the 1970s and the mob. It's a mob story about 1970s Kansas City.
It's a pretty good episode.
We're talking about an area in that episode that, in context of the story, was almost completely abandoned, and one guy was using cheap rent to build a new district. Now, going down there, I was doing shopping on Sunday. It is almost impossible to walk around the River Market, which is a massive, functioning, basically large farmer's market. It's impossible to work your way through that crowd because the stalls are packed to the gills.
Yeah, it's popular, it's foot traffic based, and it's fed by the streetcar.
Yeah,
which 10 years ago would have been completely unthinkable.
And I'm not sure if that was on the recording or not, but we were looking at Google Street View of that area. I think it was after the recording, actually, in which we were looking at one building that I was interested in. And we were looking through the years, going back through every time they sent a Google Streetcar car around there.
Yeah, and if you don't know, you can go back in time. Yeah. So you can look at Kansas City 5 years ago and compare it to today.
Yeah. And we, I think, went back to 2011, and we turned down the street, and we both said, oh my God, holy shit.
Yeah.
And what was, from our modern understanding, from 2023, is an apartment complex.
Like a gigantic, tall apartment complex.
10 years ago, over 10 years ago, there was basically a stop, then nothing.
Yeah, it was a field, a dead-end road, and a fence that had a big art sign on it. Yeah. That was it. And now it's dense, large apartment complexes right next to a walkable market 2 blocks away from a streetcar.
And also, with the building of the Buck O'Neill Bridging, I can't believe I'm shifting this to a Kansas City focus.
No, we're talking about Kansas City a lot here because we live here, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the focus of this podcast broadly. But I think the big example for this is if Kansas City can do this kind of improvement in this time frame, there's hope for every single city in the United States, because Kansas City is not only ground zero of highways. Like the first interstate highway project, I-70, kind of started in the Kansas City area. All that stuff, ground zero for highway construction. We got gigantic highways bisecting downtown. We're going to cap, 470?
Yeah,
we're putting a cap over 470. We're going to turn into a park. The
Yeah.
North Loop, there's been some talks to actually demolish that. If Kansas City can do these things, if Kansas City of all cities, then any city can do it.
Yeah, and Cleveland. No, it's Cincinnati. Actually, it has a almost identical streetcar, actual platform.
Cincinnati streetcar, Seattle's streetcar. I mean, freaking Houston has their own light rail network. Dallas has their own light rail network. That's Texas.
Omaha. People who don't can't wrap their head around Omaha.
Nebraska
is about to build their own streetcar system.
Yeah.
So
Omaha, Nebraska is the textbook case of how to build. What is it? BRT.
Bus rapid transit,
yeah, bus rapid transit. They're the model for how to run that successfully. Freaking Omaha, Nebraska, another car-centric, no public transit city, is doing the model on how to successfully run one of those buses.
And there's a massive, massive undertaking to tackle this in the United States. And I understand how not just bikes and other people as well, because I was facing an almost similar thought where you feel like there is no possibility for change. Things aren't going to happen overnight. And with the other socioeconomic issues within the United States as well, it's soul crushing, and pulling yourself to doomerism and trying to escape through one way or another is a valid point. But I'm going to call out not just bikes. You're a coward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you ran away.
Yeah.
You ran away. You're not part of the solution. It's really easy to sit up in an ivory tower of the Netherlands and critique and complain about other people, but then you're also doing a large disservice to the people actually trying to change things. How do you think it's supposed to help anything at all to just do a critique of people should give up on North America? Okay. You've just helped the people who are trying, opposing these projects. Yeah, of course, we just give up. Just give up.
Yeah.
There's no change. You can't do anything. How does that help? Instead, you should say, yeah, you can change, vote. I hate doing the whole like vote, but it's like a lot of regional elections are decided by a small number of votes. So if you get out and get local in your community, I'm not saying you can affect like the president or the Senate, but like your local city council, if you can elect people that want to like change zoning laws, that's a direct change you can help do.
And the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you're annoying, and I know a lot of people are like, don't be annoying. If you're annoying, eventually they're going to have to deal with you one way or another.
Yeah.
And usually the easiest solution is eventually giving you what you want. And if you and your local urbanist friends are out there and you're out there in force trying to fight against the people, because the people who are also pretty annoying are the NIMBYs who are going to oppose this, who want to drive their cars. If you can outgun them, which you can, because there's strength in numbers, and you aren't the only person thinking about this.
I mean, it's almost as simple as, in a lot of cases, just actually go to city hall meetings. Because a lot of the times, like we had an example here in Kansas City, where we built a bike lane, and one guy complained and got the bike lane torn up. He went to city hall meetings. He was complaining every single week, and eventually the city hall members, who are human beings, got tired and were like, if it shuts this guy up, we'll tear it down, whatever. Now imagine if there was 2 urbanist guys there supporting it, being like super vocal. No, we need to keep this thing. No, if you tear this down, blah, 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 I use it every single day. That would have changed things. That would have helped prevent that, right? If you get out and get active, a lot of times city hall council meetings are only really populated by older people who complain about apartment complexes being constructed, complain about bike lanes, complain about trans. Ooh, how am I going to pay for that? Blah, 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 blah. But if you go be equally annoying in the opposite direction, then all of a sudden their weight does not carry as far. All of a sudden there's opposition. There's people voicing an alternative position, and that can help to influence things for the better.
And it's cheap. Pain is cheap. Putting down a law saying you can't drive down the street is pretty cheap. Mm-hmm. These things that are small achievements of increasing the human environment, there are affordable options for cities, because building a massive $300 million streetcar system is cost prohibitive, especially Kansas City, although in some budgetary, not the most wealthy city in the country, and actually far from it, is still able to somehow make it work. And that is where also driving your representatives on the national level to maybe bring back the old 90% of highway funding can also go to build transit systems type of deal.
Yes, the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1972, in which, so normally the split is 90-10 for highways, but instead in that act that was in force for 10 years, you could use highway trust funds to fund public transit systems instead of highways. So if cities wanted to put in a KC streetcar, they would get a 90-10 split all drawn from the highway fund, the gas taxes help fund, and then you could, basically only pay 10% of the cost. So you'd pay $30 million for the KC streetcar. Yeah.
And it's almost like if that was brought back, you can pass your representative to bring that back.
They do a Federal Aid Highway Act almost every 10 years or so.
Every city in the United States, with enough push and the backing of that, could not build one piecemeal part of their system at a time, but explode their transit systems.
Yeah. Do like the DC Metro or Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's like...
Which are both 1970s examples of this being done. Mm-hmm. Because the thoughts that Not Just Bikes are talking about are thoughts that Americans have been having for a while.
Yes.
This is just the generation to do it. And if you're listening to this now and you live, coast to coast, wherever, there are other people like you. You just have to find them. And staying with those thoughts in your head doesn't really help, because these are thoughts that if you vocalize it, a lot of other people around you are going to be having probably similar thoughts.
Yeah. And I just say, and this is really easy for me to say, right? It's harder to do, but I just say, if you're kind of getting down, if you have that doomer mentality, just earn it, right? Like, at least earn it by doing something. Like, it's a lot easier to say nothing can ever get better when you're actually doing and trying. Like, if you try and fail, then you like earn the right to be kind of sad for a little bit. But if you're just sitting on your couch listening to our podcast and not actually trying to get involved in your community and trying to, influence people's votes, I would say you haven't really earned the right to be as pessimistic as people like Not Just Bikes are, who is not actually having, going out and trying to affect people, trying to do polls, trying to annoy their city council members. I don't think he's earned the right to be as pessimistic as he is because he doesn't live here. I mean, I hate to do the whole like Americentric. He doesn't live here. He doesn't actually live day to day with any of the problems people experience. He lives by, oh, look at this map. Wow, I'm sad. It's like, who gives a shit? Like, you're not trying to actually live in this stuff. You're not actually trying to change things. You haven't earned the right to be this bad of a doomer. But North America, is completely, we should just give up. It's like, yeah, I don't think he's earned the right to say that because he makes YouTube videos and doesn't do anything. I mean, I would say before he had this take, it's like he was doing a lot to, highlight issues. That's a good thing. That's change. That's productive. But just this kind of take kind of undermines the entire message where it's like, what is the point of your videos? So genuinely, like Not Just Bikes, you're never going to listen to this episode. What are the point of your videos? Of here, we're highlighting this. Well, if nothing can ever get better, why even bother highlighting it? Like, what's the point? Just stop highlighting it. Just talk about the Netherlands. Don't talk about the U.S. Just talk about how great the Netherlands is. Why even bother bringing up the U.S.? There's no hope, right? See how unproductive that is? It's like, well, clearly he thinks that there's hope, or else he wouldn't bring it up.
And you guys out there, you should have hope because you have value. Yeah. And you are capable of doing many things. And changing your city is one thing you can do.
Yeah. I mean, we have a streetcar here in KC. You can get a streetcar there. I mean, look at Minneapolis. They've got a light rail network that's been built in the last 20 years. They've got a vibrant downtown community. Mm-hmm. That's change. That's not completely hopeless. You've got like LA, San Francisco, all those public transit systems expanding. LA's transit might get fixed in the next 20 years if they actually commit to expanding their system. That's something that's being fixed. Cincinnati, a city much like Kansas City, has its streetcar system. That's something that's improving and being fixed. I mean, New York is New York, New Jersey is New Jersey, but just like transit systems, the Amtrak map, we might actually get like new Amtrak routes and major expansion for the first time in however many years. I mean, I might be able to take a train down to Wichita from Wichita to Oklahoma City for the first time ever. And all of a sudden from Oklahoma City to Texas. That's improvement. I would say that's not completely hopeless. Just because change doesn't happen overnight, I mean, what change has ever happened overnight? Like, good change, I mean. Like...
Nothing, and the only way that stuff is going to get better is if you're out there and you're battling people who have nothing better to do but be losers who don't want to get rid of their car. And I'm not saying you have to get rid of your car. If you really like your car, you're allowed to keep it.
It's unrealistic to argue that you should sell your car tomorrow because, like in most cities, you need it, but just do what you can to make it less necessary.
But the NIMBY mindset is extremely difficult to combat unless you're out there and you're showing the good things about
the easiest way to combat the NIMBY mindset, the kind of anti-transit, anti-whatever, is just get them on a streetcar, get them on a train. I think a lot of that is just, I've driven my whole life. How can this be good? But what's helped a lot here in KC is we have a streetcar. People have ridden it. Oh, this isn't so bad. This is kind of nice. Oh, I kind of like not having to navigate traffic. I kind of like being on my phone. That's the number one thing. Just, go on vacation to Chicago, ride the L. Oh, this isn't so bad. This is kind of nice. I can get anywhere in the city in like 20 minutes on my phone. I can have a beer, It's really not that bad. Just get out more.
Anyway, that is a emergency early Clio Talk episode.
Emergency. Yeah. Don't be doomers.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Anyway, you can follow us on Twitter at Clio History. You can email us at cliohistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can give us a share and a like wherever you have your opportunities to. Make sure that helps us in like algorithms, so like that. I've been Matt.
I've been RC.
And hopefully we can get ourselves a Blue Sky code sometime soon for
Yeah.
the podcast Twitter account as well. Maybe,
Hopefully.
maybe question mark.
This is the Anti-Doomer podcast.
This is everything's gonna be fine. You just have to put a bit of fight into it. All right, guys.
Bye.
Bye.